Let's do this, 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 this. Give everybody here a second to join in. On there. All right, and welcome everybody to the second to the last author interview for Fantasy Romance February, Pharaoh Feb. Tonight we have Jacquelyn Benson from Kensington, right, New Hampshire?
Yeah, that's right.
Let's see, I had everything all set up here, and I have to go back to find what I was going to say. Always happens. Jacquelyn writes smart historical fantasy, where strong women confront the stranger things that occupy the borders of our world. Her debut novel is The Smoke Hunter and was nominated for Best Fiction for RT Times. Her new series is The Charismatics. The first in the series is The Fire in the Glass, which we happen to have signed copies in the store. They're also available through our website as well. And second, soon to come out in April, is The Shadow of Water. And she also won a gold medal for being clever. Welcome, Jacquelyn. And let's start with that.
Really? That's where we're going to go first.
That's where we're going to go first. Oh, before you do start, I would like to ask everybody just to kind of keep their videos and microphones off. That just kind of keeps down confusion. And again, gold medal.
Gold medal. It's upstairs. You know, the kids play with it, so I can't bring it down to show it to you, or I'll get shanghaied up there and probably not make it back in one piece. But yes, I was given a gold medal for being smart. I was a presidential scholar in 1998. And got to meet Bill Clinton and shake his hand. And part of what you get as a presidential scholar is a shiny gold medal. So
oh, wow, very nice.
It hangs out upstairs in the kids' room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
All right. So we got some of the fun stuff. I mean, we got a lot of fun things to talk about. Well, here's the next fun thing. You lived in a museum.
I did live in a museum.
What is that all about?
So I was a caretaker for a historic house that opens for tours in the summertime. So we lived in a cottage on the property. This beautiful place in Maine on a river next to a state park. And we were basically in charge of watching for squirrel invasions in the winter and chasing off people that were coming to make out in the parking lot in the middle of the night. But it was really cool because part of the responsibilities as caretakers was we had to go in and do a walkthrough in this place once a week. So it's this big 18th century mansion right on the corner of the river. And you'd just be walking through this place alone. You know, usually it'd be late at night that I'd remember we had to go do our walkthrough. So walking through this creepy, dusty mansion full of antiques at dusk on an isolated river in Maine. It was fun. It was a good time.
What kind of a museum was it?
It was a historic New England property. So they take old, certain old homes that have a really good story behind them or really unique properties, and they keep them up and open them up to the public as educational resources for people. So
now I may have missed this, but did you live in the house, or did you live nearby and just go
the house
around?
So there was the house, and it also had a big barn, and then there was another cottage that were all part of the property. We lived in the cottage on the property.
Okay. Was it haunted?
So I never had anything spooky happen. I have one friend who stayed at the house once who insisted that there was something ghostly there. And I have lived in some haunted houses. So
have you?
Yes.
What's the weirdest thing that's happened to you?
In a haunted house?
In a haunted house, yeah.
It's gonna sound like
or something.
Okay, creepiest thing. It's gonna sound like a nothing story, right? It's gonna sound like absolutely nothing, but it was there's a term for it, and this term gets used in a lot of different ways in fantasy fiction, but in folklore, they call it a ghoul, right? So a ghoul is it's a feeling that you get. There's no auditory or visual element to this presence. It's just something that you feel. And in the house that I was growing up, in the middle of broad daylight on a Saturday afternoon. I went to get something out of a closet that we had, and there was something in that closet. It was just a visceral awareness of presence inside there, something that did not like that I was nearby and wanted me to go away. And it just came out of nowhere. And I've had encounters with ghosts that were visual. I've seen things, I've heard things. I've heard a lot of stories about people who've had sort of these bigger, showier, more Hollywood ghost encounters. But that was the creepiest. That moment was the creepiest moment. I can still remember what it felt like, and the chills are just like buzzing up the back of my neck.
Wow. Anything ever move on you?
I've seen shadows move around, and I've had actually pretty recently something was trying to get my attention and popped a painting right off the wall.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
That's
was
been
like,
cool.
okay.
All right. Yeah, you have my attention. Sure.
I get it. Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm asking these particular questions is because you're also studied anthropology in Belfast, Northern Ireland.
I did.
That must have been something.
It was 2 years after they signed the Good Friday Accords. So just after, the IRA and various paramilitaries over there have called ceasefires, but pretty fresh. I wanted to go someplace that was very different culturally from Southern New Hampshire, but where I wouldn't have a language barrier to be able to really understand people's experiences. And so Belfast gave me an opportunity to do that. It's awesome. It is a really cool town. If anybody's ever thinking about going to Belfast, I highly recommend it.
Someday, my wife and I are hoping to get over there. Her last name is McPhee, so she's the Isle of Colonsay in Scotland.
Okay,
is where her ancestors come from. So one of these days we'll get over there and eventually work our way over to Ireland too, because I guess they might come from that northern part there, way back. But while you were there, though, you wrote a thesis on the cultural anthropology of the paranormal investigation.
I did. Yes, I studied ghost hunters as a social group, and I have the thesis is up on the bookshelf up there. It's dusty. It's looked at a long time. But it was a fascinating project because I actually did the research work back here in the States and met up with over a dozen different groups of paranormal investigators, and went on ghost hunts with them, sat down, did interviews with them. I actually did like a weekend, like living in the house of one of the investigators because she invited me to just kind of immerse myself in her life and see how she juggled it all. She was a single mother who did this stuff. And they were awesome and, intelligent, passionate people who came into this stuff with this really nice, healthy balance of both faith and skepticism. But what the thesis was about was looking at how being part of any social group of people changes the way that you think about and perceive the world. I can go deep in that if you really want me to geek out.
Well, we'll see. But did it?
We'll leave it there for now.
Right. Well, did it change the way you saw the paranormal? Has it changed your view? Were you always interested in the paranormal? Well, you must have been interested in the paranormal because you wrote a thesis about it. But were you a skeptic before? Are you more of a believer now, or are you still kind of on the fence?
I have always been interested in it. Since I was a kid, I have on the bookshelf over there, I have 20 volumes of Timelines Mysteries of the Unknown. I make a quip about that in my bio, but it's legit. I read those books when I was 8 years old and was like, oh. But was probably a skeptic up until I did the thesis. Always looking for the rational explanation for things, thinking that a lot of this could come down to, maybe just the people perceiving what they wanted to perceive. But the experience of working with those groups and some of the things I saw and ran into while I was with them, and right around the same time, totally coincidentally, I was exposed to a video recording of a ghost that a friend of mine had made. And I can remember watching this video and my brain going through all of the possible explanations for what I was seeing. What could possibly have done this? It was a voice on a tape where no voice could have been. And my brain just ran out of possibilities. It ran out. And I that feeling of looking at this television screen and thinking, I have nothing else to offer except there's a freaking ghost on the screen, you know? And from there, it just made me want to deepen my study of this stuff and think more open-mindedly about where the limits of what we call real in the world actually should be.
What's one of the scariest places that you went to with these groups?
Hmm.
And even if you didn't see anything, it was either just a creepy place or you had an experience there that made it one of the scary places.
I don't remember any of these places being particularly scary. I mean, we were in a lot of old graveyards. We went to a former mental hospital at one point, but none of those places felt as scary as my freaking closet that Saturday afternoon I was telling you about when I was a kid. Because ghosts aren't necessarily scary.
Right.
Right?
Right. It's just the unknown of it that makes it intimidating.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you think of all these ghost hunter shows like Taps and Ghost Nation, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures? I mean, obviously there's some that are just a little over the top.
So I actually met the guys from Taps when I was doing my research.
Nice.
Yeah, Garth and Jason, and they're great, and they are legit. They're just like smart, level-headed guys who really cared about this stuff. When I was interviewing with them and went to one of their meetings, it was when they were very quietly telling me that they were in talks with a network they could not disclose about a television show, and they were kind of really like not sure if they were going to go forward with it because they were a little afraid that TV would misrepresent what they were about. And I would say from watching Ghost Hunters in particular, I think that they did a pretty good job of keeping it balanced and showing that they weren't just, this wasn't just thrill chasing. They were really trying to use their skeptical faculties when they approach these situations and like consider every possibility. I remember Jason telling me famously that like, some certain percentage of the hauntings that he'd investigated, he was a plumber, and he was like, it's, half the time I find out it's something going on with the pipes, So.
Yeah, we watched it religiously when it first started. I'm a skeptic, but I've had a few experiences that I can't explain. So, I'm kind of leaning a little bit to the right side of that. But I just remember, and my wife and I talk about this all the time, is the very first, I think it was either the first or second episode, no later than the second one, where they were in this family's house and they caught on their digital voice recorder, this sounded like a little girl's voice. They don't want us here. It was like the first experience we've ever had of hearing something like this on a recording device of some sort of. And my wife's former house our parents' old house was haunted. She has stories and stuff like that, but just to hear that, for me especially, I've never heard anything like that. So it was really creepy and really sparked my interest in all that. Did you have any experiences like that over in Ireland?
No, I had them in Massachusetts. When I was interviewing one of my subjects for my thesis, I brought I'm recording about an hour of interview footage, and I brought it back to Belfast. And 3 months later, I'm transcribing my tapes, and I hear myself ask her this question: what would it take to convince a skeptic of the reality of the paranormal? And she kind of takes a minute to think before she answers. And this other voice on the tape says, I'm here.
Wow.
Yeah. And then she pops in and says, I think it would take experiencing something for themselves. And I mean, this was an empty room with the two of us in it. And I remember just falling back in my chair.
Well, I have an EMF reader. I have meter. I have a Boo Buddy, Boo Bear. I have a spirit box and a DVR. So one of these days, maybe we can get together and go.
And do some ghost
Do some ghost
hunting.
hunting. Well,
Mhm.
my father passed away a couple and a half years ago, so my daughter, she is really into it as well.
Right.
She's like, "When are we gonna go to the cemetery and bring your spirit box so maybe we can talk to Grandpa?" I'm like, "We will. When the snow's gone, and we get a chance, we'll definitely go and do that." So, I'd like to get to our first question,
Mhm.
and so it seems like you have a good following here in the U.S. in New Hampshire, especially with your books. But I don't know if you know, but you are also an international bestseller. I got an email yesterday from Gabrielle Lamontagne, and she's here with us on Zoom, all the way from London, England. And I'm really glad that she was able to remember to get on and that she was able to get on. So her question is, how did your time spent in Ireland and your degree obtained there influence your writing, i.e., your structure, style, choice of genre?
So first of all, you need to tell Gabby that it's way past your bedtime. And I actually know Gabrielle Lamontagne. But that's a great question. I would say the time that I spent in Ireland, in Belfast, and traveling around in the United Kingdom and Ireland, I've always loved the literature of Britain and Ireland, particularly that sort of 19th and early 20th century literature, and being in the places where these stories were written and take place, and just soaking up the atmosphere and the culture and the modern culture of it, which is so much more like saucy and diverse than what you get in, your 19th century classics. Um, it made me want to write books that captured the spirit of the ones that had sort of interested in me in that part of the world and in that period of history, but bringing elements of the Britain and Ireland that I saw living there now in this century, bringing some of that into the story as well, and not making it be. I write fantasy fiction, but I don't want it to be a fantasy world that's just full of these sort of cookie cutter characters,
Mhm.
you know?
You'd have a great answer. So over there, of course, everybody has an idea that Ireland is a magical place, because you hear the stories, you see the movies, the gnomes, the elves, and the fairies, and that type of Gaelic type stuff. Um, uh, um, I also read on your bio that you practice unintentional magic. Does that have anything to do with being over there, or what's the unintentional magic?
Well, I don't think it has that much to do with having been to Ireland. I think it's unintentional magic is, um, I don't necessarily intend for odd coincidences and confluences to happen, and they do sometimes. And I've just come to terms with the fact that, and I think I kind of put some of these words in the mouth of some of my characters in the stories, but that the world in general is a much stranger and more actively engaged place than I think we give it credit for. And some of that could be wishful thinking on my part. I recognize that there's the
Mhm.
skeptic brain is always operating, but there have been moments in my life where things came together in ways that almost felt like the universe was just playing this delightful joke on me. Um, and to me, that's a kind of magic. So
Mhm. All right, so let's kind of get into your books because I want to get into the ideas of and you kind of touched on this a little bit, the ideas for your books. So where the idea? Well, let's talk about the Smoke Hunter, and then where you
mhm.
got your ideas for that.
The Smoke Hunter came from just purely loving that sort of Indiana Jones adventure genre of fiction and feeling like there's so much out there that markets itself in that world, right? There's so much out there that markets itself as like the adventure seeking artifact hunter novels, but they've lost the sense of really campy fun that I think the classics of that genre that Indiana Jones was sort of playing off of and imitating had. Like I've read everything H. Rider Haggard ever wrote, going back to like, the Edgar Rice Burroughs. And like there's a lot of kind of problematic stuff about those books now when we look back at them, but they were not taking themselves too seriously. I wanted to write an adventure story that was feminist, that put a really strong heroine at the front of the story, and not in like necessarily this sex goddess, male gazy kind of way, but somebody who was a woman whose shoes you would be really happy to stand in. And then give her just this like campy, rip roaring adventure, so.
It was very Indiana Jones.
Yeah, it's definitely like Romancing the Stone, Indiana Jones kind of fun vibe to it. And I didn't want to go for kind of the conventional artifacts that they always have you chasing. So I part of my interest in writing is that it gives me excuses to learn new things all the time. So I decided I wanted to set this in Central America and just went deep diving into like Central American archaeological records and history, and kind of created my own magical artifact out of that, piecing together bits and pieces of different myths from Mayan and Aztec stories. And it was fun. That book was fun.
Well, that's what I was going to ask was what type of research did you do? And how long did you research before you started working on the book?
So pretty much you have to pry me out of the research phase with a crowbar, because otherwise I will happily live there forever. I love Google Books because I can filter by date and I can read the literature that would have been the stuff that my characters would have been exposed to. So I remember for Smoke Hunter in particular, I found this book called The Handbook of British Honduras, and it was basically like this guidebook that they wrote for civil servants who were coming from England to work in British Honduras. This thing was fascinating, and it told you absolutely everything you could possibly want to know about what British Honduras was like in like 1900. And I read it cover to cover. I read the whole thing. I read old train timetables. I read like accounts of missionaries who had traveled to Central America in like the 16th century. And finally I get to the point where I'm like, if I don't stop, I'm never going to write the book.
So the book starts off in London in 1898. How did you build the world of London in 1898? What did you do? A lot of research as what it looked like, and
I have like, here, we'll show and tell. There's my map of London. That one's actually from 1920, that map. So old maps. I love this guy, Charles Booth, did this crazy detailed map of London in the late 19th century where he color coded every block by poverty level. So you can look at this map and see exactly how wealthy various people were. Where were their shops? Where were their factories? Where were their slums? Where were the rich people hanging out? Like, there's just I've been doing this now for, I guess, probably 10 years or so that I've been trying to kind of live in this particular era and centering a lot of stories on London. I've dug up so many resources at this point that I can go to when I want to know what was on a particular street. Old ordnance survey maps, the Google Books thing. Today, I was trying to figure out where you would go if you were trying to read the pension records of Second Boer War veterans, and it's the Chelsea Hospital. So full of decorated old war veterans in these flashy red uniforms. It's like we're going there. We're totally going there.
So somebody who's familiar with London of that era would be able to pick out and pick out the places and stuff. Are you ever worried that you may not get it right, and then, or you didn't get something right and have people be kind of, I mean, everybody's critical of everything, but
I invite them to find the holes. They will probably be there because
yeah.
Also sources aren't perfect, but I definitely do my damnedest to set these books in as real a version of, early 20th century London as I can, because I'm taking such liberties with reality in every other aspect of the story. I can at least put it in a real place.
Right. What about now? Well, no, what about Central America? Did you have an idea? How did you build that world that she goes to?
I have a Google Earth, like where I mapped their whole route through. I like picked the locations in the mountains where they were going to end up. I went on people's Flickr accounts and looked at their photos of being in those places. I watched YouTube videos of folks from Belize to get a sense of the cadence of their language and their accents. And Yeah, if I could hop on a plane, it would probably be faster if I could just hop on a plane and go to these places, but you can't hop on a plane back in time,
Right.
sadly. So I do everything I can to immerse myself as thoroughly in that world as possible, and then bring as much of that back with me as I can.
When you're talking about the map and the different points, all I could picture was Indiana Jones, that part where he's flying and he's going to those different points trying to get to Cairo.
Yes,
Do you
but
ever think
I
of
have satellite photography on my side, so.
do you ever think of doing something like that and putting that on your website on the book page of that? Just kind of do a little map to show where she
It's
where she
not a
hops
bad
from.
idea. It's not a bad idea. I probably don't need to do it for the charismatics because so far those books have all taken place within pretty much the landscape of London. But yes, that it would be fun. If anyone out there is an illustrator and they want to illustrate that map for me, I will tell you exactly where to go.
Kat Scully. We had her on. She's a graphic artist. She works on video games, but she's also she wrote a book, Jennifer Strange, which we have in the book. We interviewed her back in December for our Frightmare Before Christmas horror writers series. But she does world maps like that. So Kat Scully, I'll throw that out there as somebody to check into. Now, you also show that you have a content warning for the Smoke Hunter. Now, without any spoilers, what's the content that's being warned about?
So content warnings, this is kind of an interesting thing that there's been a rising call for it, and it's essentially to put somewhere at the front of your content. I have them on my website too. I try to put them on the detail pages for my books when they're online, that just alert you to any possible triggers that might be in the book, things that if you're going to read this or watch this. So I have a dear friend whose brother had a particular injury, and it turned out I was using a similar injury in my book. And I remember she pointed out to me, like, I don't think I can read that because it's really going to upset me to read about somebody having the same injury. And I thought, it was kind of a wake up call for me that things that I don't think, that I'm certainly not sensitive to myself. There are plenty of people out there in the world that are, and I would rather that they have the chance to decide up front. And the way I write my content warnings, they're not spoilers. Like, you can read the list of content warnings, and for some of you, you'll read it and go, everything in that sounds fun, But for people who are maybe looking for a different type of book, it just gives them a heads up before they get invested in the story, and then I end up making somebody feel uncomfortable.
I wasn't sure if it was in relation to, because when I first learned about Pharaoh Fab, I got onto their website and I saw that they were different. We're talking fantasy romance. I wasn't sure if there was some sort of there's different heat levels, I found out.
You
And
do
so
talk
I
about
wasn't
heat
sure
levels.
I wasn't sure if this was a content warning about the heat levels,
Yeah.
but I do like that you do that. There's a follow-up question for that, which I'll get to later, when you had mentioned that something that you don't think about at you because you never dealt with that. But I do have another question though over on Facebook. Do you complete your research prior to writing, or do you research as you go along?
I do both. So I write in layers. My high school art class, I remember them teaching us about like the Renaissance style of painting, right? Where they're trying to make things look really, really lifelike. And that a lot of the painters would do it in layers, right? They'd sketch out the overall composition, and then they'd start just layering in more and more detail. That's how I write. So I sketch out the overall composition, and there's elements of research that have to be done for me, even to get my head around the scope and themes of the story. And then I will map the whole thing out by scene. XYZ happens in this order. There's more research that happens then. And then finally, as I'm getting into each individual scene and doing like the play-by-play of every line of action, every piece of dialogue, and I've put in all the possible details of the setting that I might want to draw on when I'm writing the actual language, there's a ton of extra research that goes into play there. So pretty much like Wikipedia and Google Books are just like always tabs. They're just always open on my computer.
Right. Yeah, we'll definitely get into the technical aspect of your writing in a little bit. So let's go to, we have another question too. Actually, Gabrielle has asked, are you working on a sequel to Smoke Hunter?
So at the moment, no. My charismatic series I published myself. So I have the full ownership of the rights to those books, and I will write as many of them as I want. But The Smoke Hunter was published by a big five. We call them the big five, the big publishing houses out of New York. And as of right now, they have not contracted me for any further books in that series. And it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to write more of those books if they're sitting on the book that you would market and sell to get people into the series. So if they turn around and decide that they want more, I have 3 more books for those characters that are all planned out. And I could sit down and write them any day. But until either I get the rights back to the book or they decide they want more of them, those stories are probably going to just be living in my computer.
Did you ever think of just writing them out anyways to be ready to give to them when they ask for them? Maybe positive here.
I've been tempted, but time is the most precious resource that I have right now as a writer, the time that I get to spend sitting down putting words on paper. So I have to be very deliberate about what I choose to work on. And I'm also really excited to write the rest of, the story of Lily and Strangford and the Charismatics. So I've got some really fun stuff in store for them. So it's not too much of, I love the Smoke Hunter characters and I loved that whole genre and I would be happy to go back to it again, but I'm also having a lot of fun playing in the pool I'm in now.
Well, let's talk about the Charismatics. Let me just say, we do, like I said, we have book 1 in the store. Book 2 is on its way in April, which we will definitely get from you as soon as it comes out. The cover, and I forgot to bring one home with me, but I do have one sitting, but it's in an envelope waiting to get mailed out to Michigan tomorrow. Gorgeous. That one. It's gorgeous. And book 2 is even gorgeouser, if that's a word. Blue's my favorite color anyways, but just to see it, it's just stunning.
And I don't have one of those I can show you right now because my proof copy is on its way here now. It hasn't arrived yet. So
I'll see if I can dig it up here and put it up here somehow. Or just Google it. It's The Shadow of Water. It's just absolutely stunning. Who did the art for those?
So the art for the covers for those books was done by Sarah Argue, who lives just up the road here in New Hampshire from me. She's somebody I have known since I was a teenager. And it's just luck that one of my dearest friends happens to be this absolutely brilliant artist. So when I set out to publish these books, the covers are critical. It's the biggest marketing asset you have for the book. And there was no question in my mind it had to be Sarah who would do that because I knew she would bring so much to the table, and she absolutely did. Everything she does just continually blows me away.
One thing that I was hoping to do at some point was to have authors and illustrators, mainly for children's books, come in as a pair to do book signings and a big book thing. Would that be something you and her might be willing to do at another time? Does she have her own works that she does?
She does a ton of stuff, but a lot of it is commercial. But she also is a fine artist. She's done fine art painting and illustrating. I have no idea if she would be interested in signing copies of the book, but we can certainly ask.
Hopefully soon we'll be able to have everybody come in person. So here's question number 3 from Gabrielle. What was the general idea that led to the Charismatics series? Was it from your time in Ireland? Because like you were saying, it's just a fantastical place. Is that where you would got your ideas?
So the idea for the Charismatics really came from, I've always loved like superhero stories, especially group superhero stories. Like the X-Men cartoon when I was a kid was like just the coolest thing for me. But I wanted to write about the most realistic superheroes I could think of. And, you go back to your Time Life Mysteries of the Unknown, fiction or nonfiction, who can say? And you can find all these really cool stories of kind of supernatural or extraordinary human ability. So I wanted to create a group of characters with powers that felt as plausible as they could be. I love the idea of fantasy, that there's a lot of books you read and you're like, this is fantasy. I am reading made up things, right? And it's great. And you love just dancing off into that world. And then you read books that are, this is the real world. This book could have really happened. I wanted to write something that got as close to the gray area in between those things, where you're reading it and it feels plausible. It feels like as real as it could be while still being, just a crazy fun adventure story. But that just opened up the doors to a little more magic in your universe.
Do you watch fantasy shows like the paranormal shows like Supernatural or Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Or
I have seen Buffy, all the Buffy. I'm about 10 years behind everyone else with TV because I spend so much time reading like 19th century diplomatic service manuals and train timetables. So I get a lot of time to catch up on pop culture. But yes, I do enjoy watching supernatural paranormal TV shows. I enjoyed Penny Dreadful for like one season until they just like flushed their character's integrity down the toilet and broke my heart. But things like, yeah, yes.
So when did you start writing?
When did I start writing? Forever, always ago. I'm like, they talk about figure skaters and they strap their little skates on them when they're 3 and send them out into the rink. And I was scribbling. I don't even remember when I wasn't doing it. And I've always known that this was a lifelong thing for me. There was never a question that this was just dabbling. It was always a matter of time until I banged my head through that wall and got some traction with it. So
what was the earliest thing that you wrote?
my first novel was called The Thing in the Closet. I wrote it when I was 11. It is about a young girl who has a monster living in her closet. She tells her mom about it. She goes over to her friend's house to play. She tells her friend's mom about it. Everybody goes, yeah. They send her home and the thing comes out of her closet and it rips her head off.
Okay. So was this before or after your experience, your paranormal experience?
This was before.
Before?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So on a happy note, so you married a well, it says here you enjoy the company of a tall, dark, and handsome English teacher. Is that did he help you really get started in your is writing a full-time career for you, or do you have another?
Not yet. No, I am still working a day job, folks. All of you potential writers out there, keep paying your bills and you will get there. Like I am now 50-50 at this point between writing and the non-writing jobs. And the light is there at the end of the tunnel. Like I actually can kind of do math and tell you like it's going to be maybe another year or two that I will probably still need to do the job I'm doing pending some lightning stroke of luck that speeds that up. But I'm on my way. So
Is your husband a big part of your writing as far as like a beta reader or suggestions? Do you bounce ideas off of him, or does he kind of let you do your own thing?
He gives me back rubs and moral support. No, my husband is an absolutely lovely and incredibly patient human being who will put up with me running upstairs and telling him, did you know the British Army had concentration camps in South Africa in 1902? And he's like, that's terrible, honey. I completely agree with you. And wrangling the 2 small people that we made while I'm sitting down here, typing away. He is not the best beta reader because it takes him forever to read a book. So I've used him as a proofreader before, and I'm leaning over his shoulder going, are you done yet? But
now, has he ever said, well, grammatically this really doesn't fit, maybe it should be, and have you ever turned to say, what do you know? You're just an English teacher.
No, if he tells me that I have misused a semicolon, I go, yes, sir.
So I can kind of see or I see the connection between Gabrielle and you, that your husband was her English teacher.
He was.
Okay. Over in London or over here?
Over here.
Over here. Okay.
I do have fans in the UK that didn't come from New Hampshire, but Gabby is. See, she's revealing her secret here.
So okay, so let's talk about the Fire in the Glass. What's the premise of that book? Let's see. So a boy who speaks to birds, a woman who dreams of the dead, a man who steals secrets with a touch.
hmm Yes. So the Fire in the Glass centers on this woman, Lily Albright, who has visions of the future. She's always had them. She can't control them, and she's never been able to change anything that she foresees. She sees it, it's happening. She foresees the death of her best friend, and the circumstances of her vision match those of a series of murders that have taken place in London. So this woman who's kind of been traumatized by this power, that she spends her life trying to ignore it because all it's ever brought her is sort of pain and guilt, um, is faced with this moment of realization that if she can identify the killer of these other women before he gets to her friend, then maybe for once she can finally change fate, and change the outcome of the future. But of course, doing that brings her into um, contact with other people who have secrets similar to her own, and that kind of forces her to open herself up and become a little more vulnerable. Um, and also, lots of threats to life and limb, and climbing into dangerous places, and there's doing some illegal activity, and a little bit of slow burning romance going on.
So it kind of sounds like a little bit of Caleb Carr and his The Alienist.
Yeah, though with Caleb Carr, he was focusing a lot on, it was still kind of a procedural. It was just a psychological procedural. He was really focusing on, using the evidence of a murder to dig into the psychology of a killer and then track yourself back to suspects. And in this book, I kind of wanted to upend the traditional course of a murder mystery. So I remember when I was writing it at one point, I sat there and thought, well, if this was a normal mystery I was writing, we would be, interviewing, we'd be identifying suspects and going and interviewing them and maybe searching for evidence. And I thought, my characters are psychic. We don't need to do this. We can go in completely different directions with how they approach trying to solve a crime, overcome obstacles. I get to take them into just some really weird places instead of kind of this more conventional mystery route that we're all used to. And that was fun. It continues to be fun to think of how they solve problems in a way that's just so different from any other group of characters.
So one thing, we have a lot of mystery writers in our store. There's a great group here called Sisters in Crime.
Mhm.
And actually, I had somebody come in yesterday to the store looking for cozy mysteries. I really wasn't familiar with that, but I guess it's just somebody who's not a detective, not in the crime
Mhm.
scene, to ends up going out to solve some sort of mystery. Would you consider this kind of bordering on a cozy, or?
The other thing about cozy mysteries is that they're usually a little more fun and
Okay.
kind of like, they're murders, right? But like
Mm.
there's also like a courtly vicar and like, a bunch of quaint villagers, and there might be like a danger. They're more lighthearted. Yes, thank you, Gabrielle.
Okay.
My stories are definitely not lighthearted. There's humor in them, but it
Mhm.
is dark humor. I'm not gonna lie. If you are looking for a lighthearted read, I am not for you. That's okay, because some people like really moody, like intense, high stakes stuff, and that's who I'm here for.
Right, right. Um, so how dark does it get? Does it get like a depressing dark, or just very a sinister dark?
I'm not depressing. I don't really want to do depressing. Sinister, oh yeah, I will go. I will go sinister. I will go gruesome. I will go violent. I will go moody. I will go existentially dreadful, but we're not going to depress you. Who wants to read a book that's depressing? It's just
Right.
right.
So I think I got this so that I can show. Can you see that?
Oh, there it is.
There it is, The Shadow of Water. That it's just stunning. The book. I'm sorry, I forgot her name, but your illustrator just did such a fantastic job. with that. So let's go ahead and move on to that. Tell us about The Shadow of Water.
So The Shadow of Water, all of my stories are written as books that they are a full story, right? So it's not like you're going to read book one and be left with this huge cliffhanger that you immediately have to answer by reading book two. I want them to be self-contained stories because it's probably not the most commercially sensible thing for me to do. It would make way more sense for me to like leave you with a terrible cliffhanger and then make you wait a year to find out what's going to happen. But I would rather create, like, I love albums, right? Like on vinyl, I love an album, and the whole album is like this perfect piece of coherent musical experience. I want to make the album of a book for you. But the characters continue to grow and evolve from book to book, and their relationships grow and evolve from book to book. So they are best read in order. And in The Shadow of Water, we are now in a completely new story, a new adventure, but we're going to follow these characters as their relationships face new challenges, and continue to evolve. The story for Shadow of Water is about, we have another murder. They discover a body in a really cool setting that I don't want to give away. So I'm not going to tell you where it is, but it's a real place and it's so spooky and fun. This murder victim ties into this ancient prophecy that was made by another charismatic, because of course part of the mythology of these books is that there have always been charismatics. These, this handful of characters that I'm writing about are not the only people who have ever been like this. We can find them scattered through history. And in The Shadow of Water, a relic of one of these past charismatics kind of comes back to haunt us, and forces Lily into some really intense and challenging situations to prevent a pretty horrific future outcome from coming to pass.
So one question I never thought to ask, which I just did, and I'm going to, is one thing we wanted to do in the store, and I've seen other bookstores do this, is to pair books with drinks.
Oh.
So let's start with the Smoke Hunter. What kind of beverage would go great while you're reading this? Alcoholic, tea, coffee, what?
Oh no, you're drinking a. See, okay, we're getting some. I'm actually. This is great. Look at, they're all popping.
Tea, of course. Yeah, Scotch.
So the Smoke Hunter to me is a fine aged rum with a nice, with a fine aged rum.
Oh, rum. Okay.
But with a bright squeeze of lime in it.
Okay.
My tie sounds good. Yeah.
What about the Fire in the Glass? I can picture a nice a red wine. I'm not sure, maybe actually maybe a rosé or a Zinfandel, something on the lighter end.
Okay, I could go, or like a good garnacha or something like that. No, I feel like it's I feel like the Fire in the Glass, the charismatics in general, is very Scotch to me. It's smoky and a little dark and edgy, and it burns a little bit on the way down.
I haven't read it yet, but I'll make sure that I have a glass of Scotch with me when I do read it, because I would definitely love to read it. So we're gonna again, if you can just leave your videos off and your mics and use the chat box if you have any questions, appreciate that. And there we go. Yeah, so one of these is, what about tea? We do have somebody asking, what tea do you recommend to go with The Shadow of Water?
A tea for The Shadow of Water. Probably a nice Wu Yi.
Now, Wu Yi is a Taoist saying. What is a Wu Yi?
Wu Yi is a type of tea that comes from the Wu Yi region of China, and it is it's an oolong, and it's just a little bit smoky, and a little citrusy. So it's very light bodied but complex. I'm a tea nerd.
Mm.
So
okay, no, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So how much research did you have to do with the charismatics as far as, I know you have the map. Well, let me ask you that. Are there going to be maps on your website that go along with those two books?
No, no, I did make for the Fire in the Glass, I made a Google Earth experience. So it'll zip you around. And I don't know if I ever actually shared the link to that. I shouldn't I?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, because they're based in real geography. So there's really no reason why I couldn't give you, I do have Pinterest boards that I keep for the stories. And I put pictures of the locations on those boards. So that's one way that you can see the real places that I'm writing about. And I will figure out what I did with that Google Earth thing, because I remember building it, and then I did it mostly partly for me because it just helps me get my head around where everything is in the story. But I promise everybody here I will dig that up and put the link for it up on my website.
Cool. Let me know when you do too, and I'll put that out
Okay.
for everybody as well. So now to the writing of the story. So we know you do a lot of research. You have your Google Maps, your Google Earths, and your Wikipedias and all your references and stuff. Um, you sit down to write. Do you
Mhm.
start? Do you have a time of day that you like to write? Do you have special rituals that you like? Like some people like to get a cup of tea, or maybe ring a little, bang a little gong to get sort of into that the spiritual aspect. Um,
I love it.
yeah, are there certain things that you like to do to get yourself ready to write, or is it just when you get an idea, you sit down?
So I had the pleasure of interviewing this Czech artist years ago. He was a very well-known Czech, painter, muralist, sculptor. And he said it was not so much an interview, it was I was translating a translation into English. But in the interview, he said, um, at one point he wanted to be a violinist. At one point he wanted to be a dancer. At another point he thought he'd be a builder. And he had this moment where he just said, at the end of the day, you have to pick the thing that you're going to do, and you do it, and it will be work, but it is the work you've chosen, and you just do it. Writing for me is the work I've chosen. I treat it like work. And I love that because it's the best work, right? Like, what else would you rather do for work? But I treat it like work. I get up in the morning. I make sure I'm sitting down at my computer. The way that my kind of day job, non-day job goes is I have mornings that I work on writing, and in the afternoons I go to the other job. So by 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm here. I do make a cup of tea, but it's less a ritual and more a necessity, to keep me going. And I have like project management software I use to track all of the production aspects of things that I need to do, and the marketing side of all the stuff that I have to do. And I use a program called Scrivener for my stories. And it is like, okay, I get really excited about like pivot tables in Excel. I'm that kind of nerd. So everything that I do with writing is really organized. Like there's research notes that are all filed here, and character profiles and scene outlines, and yeah, all of that. And I would love to ring a gong and have a ritual. I mean, that sounds lovely, but I feel like I gotta just get this done,
Just get it
man. We
done.
gotta get down to business. I don't have time for gongs. I gotta get to work. You
Right,
people are
right.
waiting for a book. I gotta get this out there for you.
So you mentioned a while ago that you sort of have an overarching idea of a storyline, and you use all the Scrivener and
Mhm.
the different notes and stuff. Do you, um, you did mention an outline. Do you, once you kind of got your idea, do you make out an outline?
Oh yeah, yeah. So the smoke hunter. So right, we you often hear the kind of ethos that writers fall into two buckets, right? You have like your plotters and your pantsters, right?
Yep.
So I tried to write The Smoke Hunter as a pantster. It was my first book. So I started with an opening and I just sort of blabbed my way through. And I got halfway through and I kept having to go back and rewrite the damn thing over and over and over again. But I finally made it to the end and I got through that book and I looked back on it and I said, I'm never doing that again. That was terrible. I need to know where I'm going before I start this. So with the fire and the glass, everything, yes, I have an outline for the book. I break it down into scenes. Everything is very analytical. Character motivation, and what kind of growth I want them to go through in the story, and how I'm going to put this whole mystery plot together, and which clues you need to uncover in what order. And like all of that is all mapped out before I write a single word of the story that you're actually going to read.
So where you made up you had your worlds made up. How do you draw on your characters as far as their characteristics and their looks? Do you, like some people will just have a basic idea of what their characters will look like? Some will know exactly what they look like. Where do you fit? And do you draw on people that you know or people that you may see on the street for ideas for?
I'm probably somewhere in the middle. Like I feel like it's almost like my characters they're a little impressionistic. If I was painting them, I would be a little bit of a Van Gogh, not like a Rembrandt. um I because to me what's so visceral and strong about them is not their faces. I'm not seeing them, I'm in their heads. So their emotional being, I know inside and out. I can tell you exactly how they would respond to any situation you want to put them in. I will tell you what words will come out of their mouth and what they're really thinking, and like how they're going to react afterwards. Like they're emotional beings. I know better than my own face in the mirror, right? But in terms of how they look, it's almost the way that you feel about your own looks. Like I don't think of my own face, but I'll think of like a pile of blonde hair and a squint and like and being really tall. I'm sitting right now, but I'm intimidatingly tall person. That's what it's like for me. So Lily to me is, I know her height, I know her hair, I know her eyes, because they really stick in her head because they remind her so much of her father. I have a sense of her athleticism, with Strangford. It's again, there are these features that kind of jump out at me, things about him, like, I could tell you the set of his shoulders. I could tell you the way his hair falls. I can tell you, I kind of have a strong sense of his nose, but like there are other parts of him that feel a little bit more indistinct, because they're not what I'm thinking of when I'm writing him.
Mhm. Now, when you do, you said you use Scrivener. What do you write them out on hand notes first, then put them in, or do you just go straight to the computer, type them in? Have you ever been in this situation where you've been out somewhere? Do you carry a little DVR with you? Do you carry a notepad with you, or do you just write it on a napkin at the restaurant?
There's a funny acknowledgement in the back of Shadow of Water when people get it, where I thank Mary Jane Solomon for letting me borrow a notebook from her when I was working. I'm an election volunteer, and I was working at the polls, and I had a scene in my head and I had nothing to write on. I didn't think I'd have time to do this. It was a slow spot in the election, and I begged paper off of her and wrote this entire scene down, and then came home and typed it up. So yes, I write on a computer. I don't write in a notebook first. And I have absolutely been caught without something to write on when something comes into my head that I'm like, I need to get this down. And I will tell you, this is insufficient. It will not do the job for me.
Is that one of those that you can write notes on, or just talking to?
No, talking to or use the swipe, and it's just gonna like put the wrong word in there 18 times. And right.
You ever been in the situation with family or friends where you have that idea, you have nothing to write on, and you're just like, stop, don't talk to me for a minute, and you just let it run in your head until you get it in your head? Or
no, that would be more polite. Instead, I go, guys, I just had the best idea. I know you're talking about something totally different, but we need to talk about blood transfusions in 1908.
So what do they do? They look at you like you're crazy.
People are really patient with me. I'm very grateful for it.
Now, do you do? You said you have a couple other ideas for the charismatics. Do you have to work on one book, finish it before you can move on to the next one, or can you do a few scenes in this book, then move on because you have some ideas for this one, go over and start kind of working on this one a little bit?
I can multitask. You're talking to a woman who does pivot tables. I've got this, right?
Okay, what's a pivot? What's a pivot table? I wasn't going to
No,
ask, but now
I'm
you
not
brought it up
answering
again.
that question on here. I'm not doing that to these poor people.
Okay. All right. Well,
Um,
Gail Johnson says, thank you for the pivot tables.
Ah, no. So I because the books are all at different stages of development, it doesn't mix me up at all to work on them. So I'm publishing book 2 right now. I just finished kind of putting the final edits on like the proofread of the print manuscript, and I'm doing the scene sketch, the scene outline for book 3, and I'm researching kind of the baseline research for book 4. I'm doing all of those things.
So the books are all done, or the book is done. Now
Mhm.
it's time for the editing phase.
Mhm.
How do you go through the editing process? Do you go through it multiple times? Well, here's a question too. Do you edit as you go, or do you do sections at a time, like a chapter at a time, go back and edit, or do you just wait till the whole thing's done before either you or you have somebody else take a look at it?
Again, super organized. So as I'm writing, if I recognize there's something I'm going to need to change further back, and I don't run into too much of this because again, I've gone through this outline like probably like a dozen times before I'm actually writing it. But if as I'm going along, I find, okay, I need to change what a character does here. I need to reintroduce some piece of information here, or I need to move it. I have like sections in Scrivener where I put all these notes. And so I don't go back and do it. I just throw all the notes in there and I get myself all the way to the end of that sweep through the book. And then I go back and I do the whole thing again. I do edit my own work. I edit it several times before it goes to an outside editor. I don't use a developmental editor so much because I don't have to, because I have these crazy good beta readers. I think a couple of them are actually on here right now. They all have very different brains, and they all pick up on entirely different things in the story. And by the time I get their feedback, I have just this wonderful breadth of of experience of the book and of feedback on the book and of things that need to be changed or adjusted or made stronger, or they are ruthless about picking out all the places where I have been lazy in my plotting or my emotional development, and I am grateful for that.
Do you have people that you go to for 'cause you have your Wikipedia, you have your Google and all that, but have you ever gone to somebody and say, look, I need some advice on this. I can't either find that information or don't understand the information. You're proficient in it. Can you explain it to me so I can portray it correctly in the book?
Yeah, I have done that actually, and it was for a book project that I haven't written yet. I like this, the most fun example of that I had was I went to Harvard and I met with a emeritus professor of astronomical history who showed me how to read an astrolabe. And it was really cool. So I'd love to do more of that if I uh and part of this is the part of the reason I don't is because I have again this feeling of like just wanting to work as efficiently as I can. So I don't necessarily allow myself the time to bang the gong, and digging up the information from like spending the time to find an expert and hook up with them and geek out with them sounds delicious, but it's banging the gong a little bit for me
Mhm.
if I can find what I need online. And I'm really good at finding what I need online.
So if as you're reading back through it and you're editing and you find that you have to change something, have you ever come to the situation where you have to change something because you put the wrong note in the wrong file and it belongs either in a different story or another part of the book?
No, my notes are,
That good, huh?
yeah.
Have you ever backed yourself into a corner and say this just doesn't
Oh God, yeah.
work and have to go all the way? How far have you ever had? How far have you had to go back to rearrange something because
I got
you got into
halfway
a
through
phase?
writing The Fire in the Glass, and I had to stop and rewrite the entire plot of that book, the whole thing.
Oh, goodness.
I was halfway through. And I am so grateful I did it, because it's so tempting when you get to that point to just be like, oh, but can I just keep going and then kind of make it okay? If you are writing and that voice in your head is going, this is not right, you have got to listen to it. If you want to write a truly great book, if you want to write a book that, because your reader, if you're picking up on it, your readers are going to pick up on it and they are going to call you out.
Now, I read something the other day that what writers do when they get into a situation like that, and some have actually literally burned their notes because it was so bad. Now, obviously, you probably haven't burned your computer, but have you ever felt like lighting a match to that folder or that paragraph, or I don't know, maybe you do have some notes that you
No, the harder thing is when you have to take something out that's really good because it doesn't fit. So I have this character that was going to be a very important character in The Fire and the Glass. And he is this, he's a magician, an illusionist who's deeply skeptical. And he spends his free time exposing fraudulent mediums. He's also incredibly emotionally unavailable and just like he's just this very kind of a little neurodivergent, like just very strange man. And I love him. I love him. I wanted him to be in this book so bad, and he didn't fit. I had to let him go. So I call it the back file. And there are a lot of characters like that. I just created one for book 3 that already I know isn't going to fit in the book, and he's going in the back file. So there are always going to be more stories and there will be opportunities for me to use these characters, and I have to have faith in that so that I can let them go when they don't really fit in what I'm doing now and focus the story always has to be focused on like, what is the most important thing my protagonist has to learn, and what adventure can I put her on to get her to learn this thing.
so you use that back file for if you can't fit that into this story, you can fit it into another story.
And I see Gabby asking if he made a brief description, if he made a brief appearance. There is a very veiled reference to that character in The Fire and the Glass, and I invite you to find it. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Now, some of the writers that I had interviewed through this Pharaoh Fed, they have multiple books in just one series out of multiple series, and you've got Fire in the Glass, and then you have the next one coming up. But is there a character that you feel that that you really don't like, but you see kind of continuing in at least maybe the second, third book or so, but you just don't know how to kill him off because it's just an insufferable character, but you don't like it, but that particular character from the first book fits and it kind of has to be in the next ones.
I like all of my characters. I even like my bad guys. As much as I'm like, wow, this person is so awful, I still kind of like them. I can't write them if I don't like them. So I like all of them. I like them too much. That's my problem.
Now, are there characters that you do like and are expected to go on for a little while, but you know that at some point they're going to have to,
Sometimes.
this going to have to come to an end? And
Yeah, sometimes. And I think, and some of it I don't know, like, I mean, I still have the fourth book I do not have mapped out yet. And that book I know is taking place in a very challenging moment in history. So it will be interesting to see what happens with that. But the story tells me the structure of the story will demand it if it fits. And if it doesn't, I'm not doing it. Right. Like it's all about what the narrative structure demands,
did you ever surprise yourself at how something turned out, that you were going along a particular, you had an idea according to your notes and it was all sort of fit, but then once you finally got done, wait a minute,
Yes.
where did I just go with that? But I like it.
Yeah. The end of The Shadow of Water was not what was originally planned. It evolved in a way that I was excited about. I mean, I was happy about where it evolved to. But yes, I will think I know where a story's going. You always have to have the open mind of, it can't be all about the destination. It has to be about, to me, what comes first is the emotional journey of the character. So at the end of the day, like that has to be the primary driver of everything that happens in the story. And then the plot itself, like you have to make sure that this all hangs together, because you can't just drive people where you want them to go and skip them around it has to be a route that makes sense. It has to be something that feels authentic, or they're not going to go there with you.
Do you set yourself? Do you set down a certain word count that you don't want to go over, and then, but once you find yourself, maybe you're going along, you've gotten to that word count, and like, no, this just has to go a little longer, or yeah, you know what, I want to cut it right here.
So I would love to write a 75,000 word novel. It has not been possible for me. No, yes, I tried. The book 3 was supposed to be a 20,000 word novella. And when I got to 75,000 words in like the outline, I realized that this was a problem and I wasn't writing a novella anymore. It all has to be, what does the story demand? And it's important to cut out fat, right? Like you don't want to carry any dead weight. And I think, sometimes when people hear your book is 150,000 words, they're like, okay. I have really tried to make my stories as lean as they can be, to really keep that momentum up, keep that pacing up with them. But they're as long as they've got to be, So I haven't yet got to the point where I can intuit what the word length of a particular idea will end up being, until I have to get in there and just do it.
Yeah. So with your first book, you did traditional publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have somebody edit it as well? And did they make changes that you were either happy about or not happy about?
They had an edit. My editor was great with the traditional publishing. So they didn't just make changes. They came back and basically were like, here's some suggestions. Here's stuff we think would make the story stronger. Everything they said was great. There was one scene they made me cut that my heart broke a little bit at losing it. Like it totally made sense why. But part of me wants to like just offer that as a deleted scene somewhere, because it was just this fantastic moment with the character Adam. Like it was just really fun. And so I missed that one. But again, I miss my magician too. All of these things can get used again there. You can always find a place to bring them back. If they're that good, they will have a story,
Well, I was thinking we had last night's guest, Jennifer Estep. She has she has her, like, we just got her books. She has 5 main books, but she has like little side books, 1.5, 3.5. You ever think of doing anything with that, with some of these deleted scenes or extra characters that?
Well, yeah, like this book 3 was supposed to be a 2.5. So it's hilarious. I am sometimes called upon to judge flash fiction competitions. And I always tell them when they're up there, I'm like, I'm going to judge you. I'm going to give you a rating. And I'm a hypocrite because I could never do what you're doing, because I can't write anything under 100,000 freaking words. Like it just like the ability to do that escapes me. I cannot write short fiction. I have great respect for the people that do. So yeah, the idea of writing a side story sounds great. It would turn into another freaking novel on me.
So with the charismatics, you go through, you do all pretty much the editing because you're self-publishing that.
Mm-hmm.
So how many drafts did you have to go through before you finally said this is good? I think we're ready.
I have no idea.
No
I have no idea. So many. Because again, it depends what counts as a draft. Is like my first pass, which is like this sketch that's written really sloppily in the first person with lots of research notes thrown in it. Is that a draft? Or like, is it a revision if I'm just going back and popping in like half a dozen, plot changes that take a little bit of tweaking of scenes? I couldn't even tell you, but I go through it to the point where if you ask me, if you reference any moment in that book, I can tell you exactly where it is and exactly what happens before and after. And I probably can recite some of the dialogue for you because I've read it so many times.
Gabrielle has a good idea, and I saw this on, I believe it was Jennifer Estep's thing, where you could put the deleted scenes on your website.
I'm actually making notes while I'm talking to you folks about the things that I need to put on my website. So if you see me looking down, this is me making notes for you.
So you wrote plays.
I did. Yes. Yeah.
Do you miss, well, she's asking, do you miss writing plays? What kind of plays did you write?
I wrote Science fiction plays, actually. Not so much fantasy. They were straight up like golden age sci-fi. I miss the thrill of seeing a story that you've created brought to life by really talented people in front of an audience, and sitting in a crowd of people and feeling them react to what I wrote. Um, it is a little more lonely doing novels, um, because I write it and I have no idea what people are experiencing when they read my books. I have no idea.
Uh-huh.
If any of you ever want to tell me what it's like, I am all ears, because because when I wrote the plays, I could feel how everyone was reacting to the story. So I do miss that. But I love the scope of what I can do with novel writing. I love like the plays. There was a lot of restrictions on what you can write, and I mean, they have to be smaller stories. It has to take place in like 90 minutes, maybe 120 minutes max. And I can go big, and I can dig again in the research nerd in me, and just digging into all of this world that I get to inhabit when I'm writing. So I miss it, but I'm probably not going back to it anytime soon.
Can any of these plays still be seen, or where were they performed?
They were performed in Portsmouth, mostly at the Players Ring, and there's no plans to produce any of them anytime too soon, you know. But if anyone wants to, I'm more than happy to share the scripts with you.
How which was more challenging, writing the script, because obviously you have to have the for characters, everything has to be done really short for the
Mhm.
lines, short for the scenes, compared to a novel where you can expand on everything. Which one's more difficult? Or are they
It's
just
not
so
that
totally different that
it's not that either medium is more difficult. It's that if you're trying to master either one of them, if you're trying to do it really well, it's always going to pose a challenge. Like to write a really great play and to work with the restrictions of that medium in a way that works, and to know how to manipulate an audience, and to understand the capabilities of your playhouse that you're working in, and of the people that you have available to put on the show. Like that's a great challenge, but it's also a challenge to like take paper and words and nothing else, no actors, no people, no sets, nothing,
Mhm.
and figure out how to completely immerse somebody in another universe. you know um the act of writing in any medium, I think, is endlessly challenging. So there's really no way to put them on a scale against each other.
So how did you come up with, and I'm gonna try to see if I can do this again here. Actually, nope, that's not how I do it. That's not how I do it either. I'll figure it out here. I was gonna show uh, your Smoke Hunter book. Oh, this button. There we go. So the Smoke Hunter. So
Mhm.
beautiful cover. How did you come up with? Okay, so this one was professionally published,
Mhm.
traditionally published. How
Yes.
did you come up with or agree with the title?
Oh God, it was the last thing, and it came down to the wire. I had this thing under a working title, and they were getting ready to publish it under that, and they didn't even love the working title, and I didn't love the working title. And I remember it was like I had until 2 p.m. this day to give them another title, and I just sat there with like paper in front of me, and just and a thesaurus, and I'm just like, what do I need this title to do? Titles have been historically very difficult for me. The titles for the next two books that I'm writing actually came to me pretty easily. I have those before I even had the story, but the Smoke Hunter was a freaking battle, and I finally it just like it clicked like an hour before this deadline. It clicked, and I was like, there it is. This is boom. Thank God.
Do
Is
you
it
think it was the
too early
pressure
to
of
drink?
do you think it was the pressure of coming up with a title that kind of gave you a writer's block, or compared to where you're now you're self-publishing the Charismatics, you have that more time to really think about what you want to do, or
It's definitely a skill set that I mean, it's like anything, like the more you practice it, the better you get at it. Understanding what a title needs to do. The first time I was learning that, it definitely took more work to get my head around it. So yeah, it has gotten easier. Um, it has gotten easier, but there are always those moments where you're just like,
Mhm.
you know,
So with the Fire in the Glass. Uh, you had mentioned before that the cover art is a must. It has to be there. The same thing with the title. The title has to really shine and to show to draw that your customers or readers eye to it. Um, how did you choose that title?
So, so going back to, again, to talking about what a title needs to do. So a title needs to signal genre primarily. It needs to help tell your reader what your book is. Because at the end of the day, people use the title and the cover as their first glimpse to put your book in a category and decide whether it's the kind of book they like enough to learn more about and see if this is something they'd actually want to read. So like the title for The Smoke Hunter, part of what was so hard about that is it needed to say adventure. It needed to say a little dark and twisty, but still a lot of fun and an adventure. The Fire in the Glass needed to say, this is a little supernatural and mysterious. And we're going kind of dark and atmospheric, you know. And I actually like, I really didn't love that title for a long time. I have become happy with it now, but I spent a lot of time fishing around to see if there was something else that I wanted to call that book. With The Shadow of Water, it came much faster. You know, that title, I was like, nope, okay. I feel like I'm getting this. I have a sense of the kind of, you know, coagulation of language I have to put together to create titles for this series. But that's the, you know, that's what it's really about. It's what is the most important message I need to give in like under 4 words to my reader about this book that will help them understand if it's their kind of book or not.
How important is marketing both yourself
Fundamental.
and your book?
Oh God, yeah. Well, you know, this is not the field of dreams, people. If you build it, they do not come. There are 2 million, how many, 6 million books on freaking Amazon? I don't even
Mhm.
know. There's so many. And that was the challenge with traditional publishing is if you get picked up by a traditional publisher and they see you as, I know we had a question about this earlier about traditional versus indie. If you get picked up, the advantages are you get to work with these brilliant people who do your cover design for you, who edit your book, you know, and who are just, you know, my editor at Grand Central was this lovely person who was so excited about the book and the characters. But if you are not at the top of their pile of releases, there's very little done to market your book. It's more like throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And I come from a marketing background. Like this is what I do in my day job is I market things. So um, I understand fundamentally that like it doesn't matter how good your book is, how good your cover is, how good your title is. If you don't market it, like you're buying a lottery ticket. And I don't buy lottery tickets. Like I work. I get things done. So yeah, marketing is critical. And the advantage of being an independent publisher is that I have complete control over how my books are marketed. I control the title, I control the cover, I control how they're positioned, I control what I do with my ad budget. You know, where do I find my readers? How do I target them? Where do I distribute my books? All of these things are things that I can control, and it puts me in control of my career. And since this is what I do, this is what I want to keep doing, I need that control to make sure that I can make an income off of this, you know?
What are some of the things that you do to market? Obviously, you have a website, you have social media. How important are those just two sets of things?
I think they're very important. I think that it's important to have to open yourself up to having a relationship with your readers. I love getting to interact with my readers. I was actually like, uh, you know, earlier this week, I was chatting with a bunch of the Instagrammers that have read my book because I've been offering a lot of them an opportunity to read the second one. But you know, the social media is important because you need to be okay putting yourself out there. And I know the other people I know who are writing who do that under a persona, but they're still doing it even under a persona. You know, I do it more with my own face and my own identity, and with that has pros and cons, but I do think it's important. I think advertising is important. You know, I spend money on ads. You know, you have to pay for getting your stuff in front of eyeballs, or you've got to find other ways of doing that. You've got to figure out like, you know, who is talking to the people you want to reach, and how do you become the thing that they're talking about.
Did you ever do like conventions or um, writers groups, book
I
group type
remember
things?
remember conventions. They were so fun.
Yeah.
They were delightful. Yes, I did them. And then I had children and I didn't do them. And then COVID happened. And now I still can't do them, but I will do them again because you just end up in this room full of like the best nerds. It is such a good time. Um, I love book clubs. I've done some like virtual book club appearances. I record if anyone has a book club and they want me to be part of it. I can't always manage to do a live thing, but I will take questions from the book club and I will do a video of answers and send that to them so that they can get answers from me to all the questions they have about the book. I love doing that. It's fun. I am part of a writers group. We are scattered across literally the globe. One of my writer friends is here tonight. I'm not going to call her out. Maybe I should, if she wants me to. But anyway, we are like a mutual support network and we help each other out with marketing tips and plot point untangling and beta reading and moral support and just all the things, and it's priceless having that. So
Was that something you did before the pandemic, or was that I want to say a benefit of the pandemic is being able now to get online and do these type of things to get a wider reach?
we that yeah, a lot of this stuff has happened since the pandemic. I some of it was happening before as well, but like that particular group of writers, we got together I think around last May or June, something like that. But the pandemic, like any disaster, there are always opportunities for innovation that come from it. But I still will look forward to actually being in rooms with people again, hopefully
Mhm.
sooner rather than later.
Yes, us too. What are some of the other things that you do for marketing? Do you like um, bookmarks, swag, trailers? Have you ever done a book? I don't see it on your website, but have you like a YouTube channel? Do you do like book trailers?
So I'm my friend, my writing friend Rosalie just popped up in the chat. So I'm outing her now that one of my writer support group members, Rosalie Oakes, is here. And her books are fantastic. They're so fun and they are cozy. They're
Okay,
mysteries.
all right, I'll
Um,
keep that in mind.
So yeah, no, I haven't done a book trailer. There's still a lot of things. There are so many different opportunities for marketing out there. I have to be careful about balancing my time because again, the most important thing I need to do is also write more books. So I spend usually one day a week on marketing. I spend 4 days a week on writing. So I am thinking of working on a book trailer. I'm thinking of trying to put one together for the Fire and the Glass and seeing, because video is awesome and animations are awesome. And I think they're a really good way to get people's attention. And definitely if there are other aspiring writers out here, I would tell them, look into YouTube, look into doing video ads. I just joined TikTok. I'm the oldest person on there, but I'm on there. And that's not true. I'm sure there are older people on TikTok than me, but I'm like, hey, TikTok, here I am. So I'm bravely venturing into that world and figuring out how to use it because it's another way to connect with people. Also, somebody promised me that if I went on TikTok, I could geek out about all this like really nerdy stuff that I'm reading about and thinking about all the time. And there would be people on there that would actually be interested in it, as opposed to my poor, like sad family who are just like, here she goes again,
Well, you're one step up ahead of me because I have really no interest in TikTok. I can't dance, so I don't. I'm staying away from the TikTok thing. I've gotten this.
Dancing.
I've,
Dancing.
I've gotten as far as Pinterest, which I still have no idea what to use it for. But we have the big three.
There you go.
So we're kind of at our time, but I want to go a little further because I want to kind of go to the fun part,
Mhm.
some of the fun questions, what I think are fun questions, anyways. Um, so let's start with the smoke hunter. So would you like to see that as a major motion Indiana Jones, Lara Croft, Tomb Raider style adventure on the big screen?
Oh, they're actually making it into a movie, and it's called Jungle Cruise, and it stars The Rock, and I think it's coming out in like 6 months. I saw the previews from that, and I was like, "It's the Smoke Hunter, and The Rock is in it! Oh my god!" I was so excited. I know it's like technically not my book, but if I could make a movie out of my book, I would have put The Rock in it, and like, so they're already kind of doing it for me, and that
Uh,
makes me happy.
That was my question: was who would be your stars? Um, what about the Fire and the Charismatics? Would you like to see that more as a Hulu Netflix type
Oh yeah,
mini series, or more
definitely.
of a longer series, or just a couple hour?
Well, I'm gonna give them 4 books, so I think they could get 4 seasons out of it, like
Okay.
easy, right? And like I think we could do like a solid 10 episodes out of these books. So if Netflix wants to give me a call, I will script the whole thing out for them. I have not cast. Rosalie's making fun of my enormous books. Um, you're all making fun of my enormous books. So I haven't cast. I have not cast. I have not cast the charismatics in my head, except that Dr. Gardner is definitely like sounds like Liam Neeson in my brain. So there's that. But otherwise, they are. I I would love for them to be people no one has ever seen in anything before.
Now, would you want to have a hand in writing the screenplay for it, where you have the expertise in writing plays, or would you leave that up to somebody and just be more of a consultant and say, no, I'd rather have it go this way and let them
I
fix
don't
it?
know. There's so much fun on both sides of that. Yeah, part of me would love to adapt them, but I also, because I've done theater and I've handed my work off to like another producer, another director, and just sat back and been there if people needed me. And it's really fun to see what other people bring into your story, other smart, talented people bring into your story. So if they had really good people working on it, I would be like, do as thou wilt, and I will bless you. Not like Alan Moore. I'm not going to like complain about it, everything that you do, and then like grow my beard even longer. I would be very happy, but I would love the challenge of adapting my work to another medium too. That'd be a good time.
Have you ever thought of audiobooks?
Yes, I have. I would love to do audiobooks. I probably will do audiobooks, but I need to be a little further along in my career in order to make the investment in
Hmm. We do partner with an audiobook company called Libro.fm.
that. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I guess to be careful of, this is from a good friend of the stores who has 4 books out in her young adult series,
Mm-hmm.
and she did it through Audible first, and yeah, they had some sort of exclusive
Right.
rights to it or something like that. That just ran out, so now she's able to put it on
Right.
Libro. So now we can obviously advertise it. So you seem to be aware of that. So we
I
just want to
am.
put that out there to anybody else who's thinking about that type of audiobook thing.
Yeah.
Libro.fm is a great company. They support local bookstores. We get a portion of sales and all that kind of good stuff.
That's
Anyways,
awesome.
that's my shameless plug for the evening.
Hey,
Um,
do it.
who would you want to narrate your own books, or would you want somebody else to narrate that? And do you have somebody in mind?
My British accent is freaking terrible. It's terrible. I can do pretty good Belfast, especially if you get a couple of beers in me. So no, I would not narrate them myself. I would love to read you parts of them because there are some parts of them where I can hear those characters' voices so vividly in my head, and I'd love to share them with you. So maybe I will do some Instagram readings or some TikTok. I could do that on TikTok for
There you
you all.
go.
But when it comes to actually doing the audiobook, as with all things, I like to recognize where the limits of my own expertise are. Like, I am not a cover designer. I hired somebody else to proofread and edit my books. I am also not an audiobook narrator. I will hire you a really good audiobook narrator who will do those stories for you. And no, I don't have anybody in mind yet because I will need to go out there and see who's available and feels like the right fit.
Now, would you rather have one person read either with or without?
Sorry, cat.
I was gonna say a ghost. Um, would you rather have one person read with or without an accent, or would you want to have more than one, at least for a couple of the characters, if not most of the characters, different
I
voices?
I kind of like for audiobooks, I kind of like the one person reading and just reading you the story. But I frankly will admit to you, I don't listen to audiobooks really because my attention wanders and then I forget where we were in the story. And then the whole thing's just, and I read faster than I listen. I read really fast. So I'm not, I will probably need to defer to the experts on that.
Any particular voice, like you said, Liam Neeson? for that one character? Is there somebody that you would like to hear as the voice actress or actor for Lily or
I'd
your other
love
characters?
Tobias Menzies for Lord Torrington. I'd love his voice. It's so rumbly. From Outlander, anybody? He's the Frank. I'm on Team Frank. Sorry. Sorry, guys.
I haven't seen that one.
Okay. You're not the target demographic.
No, no. But I will say though, it's doing this Pharaoh Feb thing has really opened my eyes to a totally different genre or new subgenre, and I'm really looking forward to reading a lot of the books from the authors. Yours we have in store. Kat Turner's tomorrow night. Jennifer Estep, we have her books now, so I'm really looking forward to reading some of these books. And I guess my limited fantasy romance is Twilight, which I have issues with sparkly vampires, and Laurel K. Hamilton, which I did like for quite a while, but hers kind of got off the rails for me, anyways. But you know, the Hunger Games, I guess, could be considered fantasy romance too, and at some point, maybe, I don't know, but that's yeah, that's kind of as close as I've gotten. So this has really opened up, and I'm really looking forward to reading a whole, everybody's works. So what is your favorite? Well, these are kind of last minute questions here. What was your favorite all-time book? Mine, Les Miserables. I can't get enough of that book. I don't know why. I love the plays. We've seen the musical. We've seen the movies.
It's
the PBS
great.
special. It's great. It's such a good story. What is your all-time favorite story?
I would say The Sandman, Neil Gaiman's Sandman is probably my number one. That was the book when I read it. I mean, it's a 10-volume graphic novel, 70-something volume comic book series. But when I read it, I was like, I want to make other people feel the way this made me feel, of like just magic and danger and all of this just incredible emotional conflict and growth and family and betrayal and love and violence, and it was just everything. It was all the things I needed. So
Would Smoke Hunter be good as a graphic novel, and would you want to adapt it into a graphic novel?
it'd probably be great as a graphic novel, but I think it's really meant to be a movie with The Rock.
Okay. So who's your favorite actor? The Rock.
He's just so entertaining. How can you not be entertained?
He is. Yeah, I wasn't looking forward to Jumanji. I'm a traditionalist. You come up with the first movie, I like that. Robin Williams, Jumanji, and then I did watch the remake, reboot, whatever, of Jumanji.
Great, wasn't it?
It was yes, it was very entertaining.
Yeah.
So you mentioned beer. What is your favorite beer?
What is my favorite beer? The one that you have available that you're going to give me.
What's the one book that you saw? It's outside of your, well, what's your favorite genre to read? I mean, obviously fantasy, adventure, mystery sort of, but
yeah,
that's
adventure, mystery, fantasy, historical, but I will read absolutely anything. Like, I make it a point to try to read broadly. I love Cold War spy thrillers, and I love historical nonfiction, and I will read a great biography any day of the week, or give me an epic fantasy novel. That's all good. I don't know that I really read a genre that I was like, no, I would never read that again.
Well, if there's ever a James Patterson, Tom Clancy, or a Clive Cussell that you need, we've got just about all of them in the store that I can't get rid of. So please come on over and take a look to see what you need.
I think I've probably read all of them.
So hasn't everybody else. That's why they're not moving.
Right.
So, but what is the either one book, one title, or one genre that you didn't think that you would like? You just kind of saw it and thought, let's give it a try, and you actually loved it.
I don't know. I don't think I ever went. It's a hard question to answer because I don't think I've ever gone into a book not thinking that I would like it. I think I'm always just like ready. I'm ready. I'm like, bring it on. Let's do this. Let's do this story. Bring me in your world. I'm game.
Way back at the beginning, you mentioned that you were into superheroes. You like superheroes. Who's your favorite superhero?
Ooh, gosh, probably Doctor Strange. Because he's the moodiest one, you know?
Mhm.
And he's got magic.
So other than Indiana Jones, what's your favorite movie?
The Mummy.
Mummy. That's a good one. Yeah. As you were describing the Smoke Hunter, I that's actually who I Rachel Weisz
Yes.
from the
Yeah.
Mummy. That's kind of what I pictured, sort of a Laura Croft, but or Angelina Jolie, Laura Croft, but more Rachel Weisz in the hat, the um, kind of looking like Indiana Jones, I guess, dressed up sort of like that
Oh yeah.
1920s adventurer.
Yeah, no, totally. Ellie, like Rachel Weisz for Ellie, I could totally see
Mhm.
that. Her and The Rock would be great.
All right, let's. I say make it happen.
Come on. I'm ready.
Well, I'm ready to wrap this up. Thank you very much. This was very entertaining. Very good talking to you. Very nice talking to you. Everybody on Facebook and here on Zoom, thank you for the great questions. And again, um, the Smoke Hunter will hopefully be available soon in the store. We're going to get right on getting that. And but Fire in the Glass is available. We have a few signed copies, and if I run out, you're just almost right down the street.
I
So
am more than happy to sign more of them for you.
yep, yep, and hopefully we'll have you in store pretty soon for some in-person book signings. If you can't get it on to the store, there's always bookshop.org. They support local bookshops. Most portion of the sales come back to us. So, Jacquelyn, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everybody on the feed. I love you all. There's so many yeah, you guys are great. I've been watching your things pop up, your chats pop up on the bottom here.
Well, thank you again for everybody for joining us. We do have, again, like I said, Saturday night, one more Cat Turner. That'll be our last Pharaoh Feb. Go to pharaohfeb.com. There's still a few little things going on there, all their little social media stuff, and give HR Moore some love with your fantasy romance love. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.